What's up guys, welcome back to the paddleboard build series. I hope your build is going well so far. Now in this video we are shaping the rails of our paddleboard. If you remember a couple videos ago, we built our rails right here. And in the last video, we installed our nose blocking there. So yeah, we're gonna start getting all that shaped up. Things are gonna start looking much more like a paddleboard. So before we start shaping our paddleboard, we need to modify our table just a little bit so that we can hold the board on its side instead of laying flat. It's just gonna be a better position for the shaping process. So let me show you how we're gonna do that. So if we come over here to Will's table, this is exactly what we're doing. This is just a little 1/2-inch piece of plywood that we mounted to our dolly. So our board will sit in here, it'll lean against the table here. This is like about a 6-inch gap, probably 6 inches deep or so. And we'll mount it right up to the side of our table. I'm going to take this little scrap piece and attach it right here temporarily, just so as the board leans up against this, it's not going to mar the surface of the board up at all. We'll lay some old towels in here to help protect the board. There we go. You may want to adjust these holders in and out just to get a good vertical orientation on this thing. You want it mostly straight up and down. Alright, now that we have the paddleboard on its side, I'm going to be removing this edge that you see here that goes around the sides of the board. Now you could go to town with your hand plane, knock it down, that's fine. I'm just going to save a little bit of time. I'm going to pull out my jigsaw and I'm going to very carefully trim this back just to save a little bit of time. You want to be really careful here. The last thing you want to do is dig your jigsaw blade into the side of your rails. So I'm going to be super careful. I'm probably going to put a little outward angle on it to trim this thing out so the blade is kicked out and away from the rails. But use the tool that you feel most comfortable with. So let's get this trimmed off. Alright, now that we have that edge trimmed back, I'm going to start working on the nose and the tail blocking. I'm going to do the nose and the tail blocking. I'm going to do the shaping kind of in stages. The first little stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand. I'm going to shape this corner back. I'm going to kind of flatten this out a little bit so that it matches this profile a little bit, so I can start, so that when I shape the rails, I'm not running into that corner. I'm going to keep everything flat. I'm going to keep the shape basically the same. Just going to knock these corners back a little bit. And then same with the nose here. I'm just going to take the belt sander and knock this corner back, and we'll taper it off. Kind of right in here, just knock that corner back a little bit. So yeah, let's do that, and then we'll put the board back on its side and we'll really start shaping the rails. Alright, this is what we got. The nose blocking is matching up to the rail a lot better, you can see. Now this didn't take me any time at all, maybe like 10 minutes to do the nose and the tail. I'm using 36 grit paper on my belt sander, and man, this removes material super fast. So make sure you have some really gritty material. If you're using something like 120, 150 or something like that, it's going to take you forever. So yeah, that 36 grit, just chews this stuff up. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to trim up our blocking. It's a little too thick. If you notice, the spine kind of tapers down here. We need to shorten our blocking down to at least right around here. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line from this high corner over here and here down to this midpoint here, and then back up to this corner. So what I like to do is take a little piece of our Bead and Cove rail strips, lay it down the board, and you can kind of see where the top decking is going to lay. And what we're going to do is we're basically just going to draw a line right where this strip goes. We're just gonna move it back and forth. We'll draw that line, and then we'll sand our blocking down to that line. We're gonna keep everything as flat as we can. We're just gonna trim it down some. Now you can see where our strip will be right on top of that line. All right, we have our line in here. We need to sand this down. This is kind of kicked up, as you can see, kind of goes upwards. We want it to be flat. So I'm gonna cut this down as an angle to keep it as flat as possible. So all this should be flat just like it is, just kind of kicked down. And I just hand drew this line right here to have a guideline so I don't get past this. I don't want the tip of the board to like come to a point. So I left about 3/4 of an inch of blocking right here. I'll sand to the top of this line and then go from there. I like to go really slow with the shaping of the blocking, just so we don't take off too much material. So we're gonna get in here, start sanding, kick it, at an angle like this, come down to this line right here. All right, this is what we got so far. You can see we have much more of a pointed nose, so it's no longer kicking up. Now I'm not working on the actual shape of the nose. If you look down here, we got a little bit of ways to go on that. I'm just working on this angle to kind of match the slope of our spine here. If you take a little bit of your rail material to kind of mimic the top, kind of lay that down the spine, and you can see how your top is gonna meet up with the your nose blocking. And if you move that over, you can kind of slide it back and forth to see if you're getting a nice flat surface for the top to mate up with your blocking here. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. Also, where the transition happens from your blocking to your rail, this is gonna get really thin. Don't worry about that. This will all make more sense in a little bit, but eventually we're going to flatten this top edge so that we have a nice transition between the top and our rails. I'll explain that more later on, but if these edges start to get really thin, that's totally fine. That's exactly what we want, because we want our top to sit flat with our fishbone frame. So yeah, really happy with this. I'm going to do the exact same thing at the tail, and then we'll move on to the rails.
That's a lot better.
All right, so this is what we got. Looks pretty thin, but we're actually going to be trimming up the nose a little bit inward, so it'll be thicker than what it looks like here. But really happy with the way this looks. Same with the nose. The transitions are really thin and flat. It's like paper thin up here. And then if we take our piece, lay it on our spine, everything's looking pretty flat here. I'm really liking the way that looks. Yeah, now that we have the nose and the tail shaped, we're gonna start working on our rails. Get those cleaned up. Wanted to quickly show you guys Will's board. He's got the 11-2. It's a bigger board with thicker blocking, but all just about exactly the same. Here's his nose up here. The 10-6 just has a little bit more shape to it, at least on the tail. But everything else is exactly the same. Alright guys, we got the paddleboard on its side. We need to start working on shaping up our rails. Now for this part of the project, I'm going to be using my hand plane. You can use the belt sander if you'd like, but you're going to need to switch to a much finer grit. I think we used like 36 grit or something like that on the nose and the tail, but that's just because we needed to burn through so much material quickly. We don't want to do that here. We just want to barely take off any material at all. So I switched to like 100, 150 grit with that. Keep that thing moving. You just don't want to burn through your rails. We're going to try to keep these as thick and as strong as possible. I'm going to start right back here where the bottom decking meets our rail. If you look right here, we still got quite a bit of decking sticking out. So I'm going to get my planer out, start trimming this up. Alright guys, this is why I really like using my hand plane. I've only been at this for a few minutes and we got this really nice and cleaned up. Got that edge trimmed off. Now let me show you something. If you look right here in the middle of the board, you can see where our rounded rail meets the bottom of our board, kind of flattens out here. We're going to start working on this little section right here alone. We need to round off this little area here so that it matches up with our rail and we have a nice rounded curve from rail to the bottom of the board. Now you need to go check out the tutorial on Sliver Paddleboard's page on this section of the build because he explains it a little bit better. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide my board into thirds. So from the nose to about here, I'm going to have a sharper angled transition from the rails to the bottom of the board. I'm going to keep it kind of sharper. And then the middle third, I'm going to have more of a rounded edge. And then the last third, I'm going back to a sharper edge here. And then it'll smoothly transition between the sharp to the rounded and then back to sharp here towards the front. This is really hard to mess up. It's not a big deal. We're just going to be rounding this off. But definitely go check out what he has on his page. I'll have it linked in the description below. It's kind of difficult to show it on camera. So yeah, I'm going to start working on this little section right in here. We're only removing material off right here. We're no longer taking anything off of our rails. So yeah, let's get to it. Alright, I want to stop shaping the rails for a second and show you guys something that's pretty important. Right here in the middle of the board, hope y'all can see this on camera. So what we have here is our bottom decking right here to this edge, and then right here to here is our outline strip. And then this dark strip that you see right in between those two, that's actually our foundation strip. So we've cut through our outline strip and that's our foundation strip poking through. So this should be a warning to you because you don't have a whole lot of material left to go before you're going to punch a hole through the board. So once you see this, be on the lookout. You're probably only going to see it at the center of the board because we're taking off so much material there. But just be on the lookout for it. Once you see it, try to be real careful about how much material you're removing in that area. So yeah, just wanted to point that out. Hope y'all can see that. Alright guys, this is what we got. We're at the middle of the board. You can see we got a nice transition here. Rounds off really nicely in the middle of the board, and then as we head back, still kind of hard to see. Kind of has a little bit of a sharper edge to it here. That'll soften up some as we sand as well, but just wanted to show you guys that. So yeah, that transition's looking really good. Everything's nice and smooth. Now's a good time to look over the rails to see if you have any gaps that need to be filled. If you look right there, I got a little gap that needs to be filled. Actually have one up here. The nose of the board. Not sure what I was doing here. Just didn't get it good clamped up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some sawdust and super glue. Works as a really good fast filler. We'll get that in that gap and then we'll get that all sanded out and you'll hardly even notice that it was there. So yeah, just look over the board. I got another one right there. Not a big deal. If I haven't mentioned it already, I'll mention it again. Woodworking is all about hiding your crimes. Alright guys, our rails are pretty much done. We've got everything smoothed out. We don't have any more high spots or ridges or anything. Everything's really nice and smooth. One thing I want to mention with the sanding, don't worry about like working through your grits of sandpaper from like 100 to 400 or anything. I'm using 120 grit, and as long as you're sanding with the length of the board, you should be totally fine. You're not going to see those sanding marks, especially after we put the fiberglass on and the resin and everything. So don't waste your time there. So at this point, we should basically be 90% done. That way, when we put the top decking on, we have very little to do. We're not going to be changing the shape any. But like I said, we've got one more step to go. If you've noticed, we haven't really touched this top edge of our rails here. So let me get the board back on the table and I'll show you what we're going to do. Alright guys, there's one last thing we need to do to our rails before we can put on our top decking, and I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. Basically, we need to flatten the top edge of our rail to create a mating surface for our top decking. Our top decking is going to overlap our rail a bit, and that's how we're going to blend everything together. So if you imagine this is our top decking laid across this way, we need a good mating surface right here. Right now, this is just touching right here at the very tip. We're going to try to create a flat surface right there so that our top decking can mate and have plenty of room to hold on to so we can button this thing up. So let me show you how we're going to do that. Alright, for this part of the build, you're going to want some painter's tape. Let me show you Will's board. We've already done it to his board, and I think you'll be able to see what we're going for a little bit better than I'm explaining it. So if you see, we have the tape, the painter's tape running all the way down the length of his rails on both sides. And if you look real close, we flattened out the top surface from the tape up. So you can see now that this is flat, we have a nice smooth transition from our rib to our rail. And if we put a piece of wood across here to simulate our top decking, you can see how nice of a transition that is. Just like that. So that's what we're going for. We're going to tape down our rails and we'll start shaping this flat. So we'll get our tape, and what we're going to do is we're going to start right here, right where the flat starts to dip here. We're going to start our tape right in here, right below the flat. We're going to try to make the straight, smooth curve to about the middle of the board. In the middle of the board, you want to be about the fourth strip down, fourth or fifth. This might change depending on how many strips you put on your rails, but I'm going to go about the fourth strip down. We're going to go from here, smooth line, all the way, same as the nose, right here under this curve. Right here under this flat area on our tail. So let's get this taped out. Alright, we've got everything taped off. You just want to take a really good look at where you have your tape on each side. Try to get it as symmetrical as possible. I'm going to adjust right in here, I see. You just want it to be the same on each side, and what you can do is you can just count your strips at a given rail to see if it's even on each side. I wouldn't go crazy here, getting it perfect. You just want a nice, nice smooth curve all the way around. And then it tapers back out to the flat right in here at the tail. So now that we have everything taped off, we're going to start shaping this top edge, flattening that out just like we saw on Will's board. If you're going to use a hand plane on this, be really careful, because what can happen is the edge of the tool can hit a rib and you can break it. I did that on my first build. It's not the end of the world, you can fix it, but the belt sander might be a safer choice for this part of the project. All right, this rail is done. Let me give you a little up close shot. You see we got really nice transition from the rail to the rib. It's nice and smooth. This is going to be basically paper thin right here on the edge. Really like the way that looks. Now when we lay our top decking on top, we're going to have a really nice transition right there. It looks really good. So yeah, really happy with the side, but before you start to think that I'm some amazing woodworker, I want to show you that you might also have a place that looks like this. This is the reason you don't want to add a knot right here in that strip and right here. That tends to catch on the planer. And you also might break a rib like I did. So one thing about using hand plane that is tough, but not the end of the world. I can get this glued up, get it clamped up. It's an easy fix. It happened on my previous board, so I thought it might happen here. But I hope y'all appreciate the transparency. I could have easily just not shown you this. But we all make mistakes, and you might make a mistake too, but it's not the end of the world. Everything is fixable. So yeah, this rail is done. I'm going to knock out this side, and it'll pretty much be done with shaping the rails, and we'll be ready to put our top decking on. Really excited with the progress we've made so far. Alright guys, we are done with the shaping of our rails, at least for now. Be sure to leave the tape on your board. If you have any nicks from the router or the belt sander, be sure to just add a little tape, straighten that out. When we go to put on our top decking, we only want the top decking to stick to the rails in that little flat section at the top that we created. We don't want it to stick to the rails past that, so that tape is going to keep it from adhering any further, if that makes sense. That's going to help us have a nice smooth transition from our top decking to the rails. You'll see that as we go. But yeah, we are pretty much ready to put our top decking on. We're going to do that in the next video. We have a couple little things to do before we can put the top on, and we're getting so close, man. Really excited about this. Hope these videos are helpful. Y'all be sure to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, be sure to hit me up in the comment section below. We'll see you in the next video.